The only way to create a new neural pathway is to discover what the old one was telling you. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andee Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Welcome. So excited to be with you. So Natalie emailed in. I'm going to read it for everybody. So here's her question. She says, I'm wondering about when to sit down and listen and validate. She's talking in the context of off-track behavior or big emotions. So I'm wondering about when to sit down and validate and when to teach CMP principles, thought work, emotion work, all of this stuff. Surely there is a time to teach. Granted, it's probably not effective to teach during their meltdowns. And she says, been there, done that, doesn't work. But when is an effective time to revisit and address the thoughts or the words that they say when they're upset? This is something that comes up all of the time. This idea of, okay, when do we actually address the off-track behavior, the problems, the things that, especially if something went down and some words were said between kids or there was a fight, a squabble, when do I actually talk about that? Okay. And actually this happened to some degree this weekend. So I'm going to share a personal example of this, but just at a high level, principle wise. But here's what I'll say. So one, we always want to give ourselves time and our children time. When an eruption, a fight, whatever the upset is, 24 hours is a good rule of thumb. Now, you might need to address it sooner if there's other circumstances that need to happen. But if you can, 24 hours is a good rule of thumb. According to the developmental psychologists that I've studied with, it takes about 24 hours from a heated event to make sure everybody's cooled down. Now, what's really fascinating is they were commenting on the fact that if there's any type of things that take them out of the neurotypical framework, there's delays, or you might even wait longer. In a lot of the facilities that are helping kids with, for instance, they wait 48 to 72 hours just because they just takes them longer to calm down. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you've given yourself time and your kids time, that the emotions are calm and everyone's thinking is back on track. Remember, when our emotions are high, our thinking is low. So we want to have the time, but we also want to double check everyone's emotions are good, including ours. And then the last part for me, before I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with a child that's ready to have that conversation. And you can have this conversation with any of aged kids, but realize that around the age 7, typically, could be later, but around 7, that's when the prefrontal cortex is coming online. And so that's when the logic and the reasoning is starting to come online. It's not fully online. It's starting to come online. So that's when you can have these conversations and they can start to understand cause and effect a little bit better. So even though you might have conversations with a younger child, they would be different. And I can talk about that if that is something that you guys would like to listen to or learn about. The third one is peace. So we want to have the time, 24 hours. We want to make sure everyone's emotions are calmed down before we have like a conversation after an upset. And we want to make sure we're in a good place. So I said peace because of doing that daily peace, which you can do anytime, you can do multiple times a day. That will allow us as the parent, as the adult, to be able to be clear, to be able to be calm, to be able to have just the ability to know without any doubt what we're trying to actually create. So here are some thoughts, Natalie and all of us who are dealing with kids who get upset and we're trying to understand, how do we have the conversation? We're keeping everyone safe. We're saying, hey, you can't talk like that, or you can't throw things, or whatever it is to stop the danger. But that's not the time to problem solve or teach them why their brain's just not ready for that. This is very hard for us because we want to go in and fix it right away. What I want to share are some thoughts that have helped me as I've made this transition, because this used to be a huge thing for me. I'm a very emotional person. I would feel emotions were bubbling up and then they were just emoting out of my mouth. And so after a decade or more of me just getting really, really, committed to figuring this out for myself, here's some thoughts that I have used, that I had to intentionally really bring up at first. Now they just come pretty natural. And I had to actually go back and say, as Natalie asked the question, what are the thoughts I'm thinking? So some of the thoughts that I have that I'm going to offer to you, and you might want to write these down and come up with some of your own. These are the thoughts that I have when I'm actually having the conversation. This is what they need. Because if I'm in this place of this is what they deserve, I really like to differentiate that. It's not they deserve me coming down hard on them. They deserve to have this taken away. What do they need? So if I'm in the place of this is actually what they need from a place of service, this will serve them. I'm fertilizing the soil. I'm always thinking about parenting as gardening. That's the analogy, the imagery that comes to my mind. So when I'm thinking about it, gardening, I'm like, is this going to fertilize the soil, give them the nutrients, the water, the sunlight, all the things they need to do potentially better in the future? It might not be the next time, just like a plant. It takes time for that to be able to see the evidence of the work we do in the garden or with the fruit trees or whatever. It's okay that it takes a while. It's just, is this setting them up on the trajectory? So this is fertilizing the soil. This will help them stay safe. I'm not attached to the outcome. If I am wanting to have a conversation with my kids and I can tell I'm attached to what I hope it will turn out like at the end, I am not ready to have that conversation with them because that will skew everything. So I'm not attached to the exact outcome in that moment. If I believe I'm like, okay, I'm in a good place. And my job is to offer and provide an example of what's possible for them. So if I want them to handle themselves with this calm, cool, collected, and to understand how to do better each situation, I want to be doing the same in my own way. Here are the questions that I'm asking myself to get to this place of clarity with the thoughts is, what am I trying to teach? So as I am waiting this 24 hours, and oftentimes just to be clear on what happens in the moment, as I'm breaking up the battle, the fight, the whatever is going on, that this has got to stop. This is not okay. I will say oftentimes, hey, we're going to revisit this tomorrow, 24 hours or 48 hours. Sometimes it needs to be longer. Sometimes actually what I thought I needed to talk to them about doesn't actually need to get talked about. But I put it out there. We'll just talk about this. We'll circle back in 24 hours. During that window, I'm asking myself, and I would encourage all of us, this is the work I did. I still do it. It just comes much more natural to me now. It's not as it's in my subconscious. So it's super lovely. And it can be that way for all of us, but it starts with an intentional effort, putting into creating what we want for ourselves. You can ask yourself these questions and then actually write them down. That's what I would encourage you to do if you feel like you're struggling with this. What am I trying to teach? So the big event happened. Maybe the siblings were fighting again. And once I'm starting to calm down to prepare to have a conversation, potentially 24 hours later, I'm asking myself, okay, when I have that conversation, what am I trying to teach? And what do I want the result to be? Now, I'm not attached to the result. That's different. Being attached to the result is, oh my gosh, this has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, things aren't, going well. No, I'm not attached to it, but I actually want to know. I want to know in my brain, what do I want the result to be? And I'll do the unintentional and the intentional. Like unintentional will probably be that graspy one. And I just want to see that. And then intentionally, what would I want the result to be? For me, now it always goes back to my child feeling safe and me feeling connected and me feeling like I showed up in a way that helps them realize and tap into their potential. So that's the ultimate highest version of myself that's coming up with that result. But if there's any ickiness in there, I just want to inspect that. So what am I trying to teach? What do I want the result to be? Why do I want to talk to them about this? This was really fascinating as I dug into this question a lot. And I would ask myself, why do I actually want to talk to them about this? Sometimes the answer was just really fascinating. It was all about me. It was all about me, or it was all about controlling them or trying to fix them or change them. And so it gives you an opportunity as you answer these questions to inspect that. Am I attached to the outcome? So I'm doing this work in the 24-hour window. It's this gift for me and the child. I am preparing myself to show up in a way that allows them to get the best version of me and to have the highest chance of success for them. I'm fertilizing myself. I'm asking myself, what are the things they need? Am I attached to the outcome? And if I am, why am I attached to it? What am I afraid will happen if that outcome doesn't happen the way I want it to? How is this serving them? How do I want them to feel during the event and after the event? And what I'm saying during our conversation, because that's what we're focusing on today, while we're having this conversation, and then when they leave. And then how do I want to feel during the event and after the event? And then I actually really want to understand, what is my opinion of what happened? What did I think about that? Of their off-track behavior, of their yelling at each other. What am I thinking about that? And here's the thing, do not censor yourself. The only way to create a new neural pathway is to discover what the old one was telling you. And what oftentimes we do is, because looking at that old neural pathway, which is our old habits, our old beliefs, it can be quite alarming for us because we're very we're not very proud of maybe how we've been thinking or believing about it. I want us to all just look at that. What is my opinion of the situation or of the off-track behavior? And then what do I want to teach? So what am I trying to teach is what I said at the first. And then what do I want to teach and why? And I actually put it right into a steer. The situation would be a talk with my child, and I flush it out in a steer because it just creates crystal clear, such clarity on what is actually going on. What I want to create this blueprint. So then my thought about it, I want to know what that thought is going into it. I am here to serve my child. That's one of my favorite. I'm here to serve my child. I'm here to help them tap into their potential. I'm here to set an example of what's possible. And sometimes if a child's really struggling, because I have one in particular that is just, she's beautiful and just really emotional. And she's reminds me of me. She explodes sometimes. And her self-talk, because of how other people and even her own little voice inside her head has been negative about her having these outbursts. So one of the really important things I'm going into each conversation I have with her after she's had one of these events is I want her to know that this is not her, that this experience that just went down, that this explosion she just had, that this off-track emotional outburst kind of thing that just happened, that is not her. That is just her nervous system reacting to an event, getting triggered. So I'm super clear. Now, with other kids, I wouldn't need to or want to emphasize that as much just because of what they are needing. So there's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all kind of thing. But I will say, if you have your child in mind and you're clear on what they're struggling with, just like the fertilizer for the fruit tree is going to be different than a tomato plant, I think, or it's the amount of it. Maybe it's the same fertilizer, but it's the amount. I'm not actually a very good gardener. But you want to adjust per the plant. Some need full sun, some need shade. And so based on what your child needs, if you're the master gardener for them, what do they need? So as you're asking these questions, the beautiful part of that is that those answers will come up. And the more you're calming your own nervous system down and not making it this problem or not making it, not blaming yourself or blaming them, it's just, oh, this is just beautiful information. This is something I can learn from. There's no such thing as failure. You guys have heard me say that over and over. No such thing as failure. Just learning and growing experiences. And so the more we drop into that, the more we can really see the truth of what's going on. Once you have waited 24 hours, emotions are calmed down and you've asked yourself those questions. And those questions I was giving you just now, doing those within the context of peace. So you can ask them and do your downloads, your thought downloads on one of those questions or multiple questions, and then do the unintentional model, a steer model, the steer to do it to understand with clarity. And then affirm yourself. If you answer those questions within that framework and you bring them out within that framework, you can find even more answers, more clarity. One of the things that I was thinking as I was reading Natalie's question, I was thinking about this idea of control. So often, society-wise, we're conditioned to try to control the kiddos. If I can fix their behavior, then everything will be better. But the problem is we really can't control their behavior all the time. And so once we start releasing that control and we show up differently, then we are in so much more control of everything in our life. And we ironically have so much more impact and influence on our child's life. So the sign of a great parent isn't the child's behavior, it's the parent's behavior. And controlling oftentimes attribute that we have as a parent, because we have a lot of responsibility. We have so much invested. This is the most important job in our entire life. We want to make sure we have no regrets and that things go well. So this idea of control is something that we have to continue to revisit. And I use this example of controlling as like a donut diet. Trying to control our kids makes about as much sense as trying to eat donuts while losing weight. It just doesn't work. So when we're trying to control our kids with consequences, with rewards, with ultimatums, with lectures, with all of that stuff, we're going to create this tug of war. We're preparing for the next time there's off-track behavior and creating a new set of beliefs that we can bring into the problem when the off-track behavior is happening. How do we prepare for that? And one of the ways is to really inspect, where am I controlling? And really understanding it doesn't actually yield the results I want. There's this theme, this consistent theme that I know it doesn't work, but I don't know what else to do. I know it doesn't work. It's not helpful. It was done to me. I don't want to do it to them, but I don't know what else to do. And one of the things that is so critical when we're thinking about going through the circle of emotions for us and being able to process our emotions in a healthy way instead of react, yelling is one form of reacting, is to start to release this idea that we need to control our kids and put it onto us and just say, we want to control how we show up, and how we show up will change everything. So controlling is this natural reaction when we think external consequences and rewards are going to change the behavior. It just goes hand in hand. But when we understand that connecting, forming relationships, that actually is the essence. That is where behavior changes. That's where our impact and influence occurs. Then we are going to be able to release the control over the external behavior and start to really inspect ourselves and show up in a way so that we can maintain our ability to impact and influence them is correlative, is that the right word, to our relationship with them. So controlling feels terrible and connecting is heaven, but it doesn't feel natural for a lot of us. I know most of the moms I've worked with, theoretically, we understand it, but we don't feel very comfortable releasing the control. To release the control and to have a better life, right? To have a better life as a parent. And we think the way is to control these external circumstances, to change our kids' behavior, to change what they're doing, to change what they're saying. And so we try to make our lives better from the outside in. We try to change our parenting from the outside in, but this is temporary. So consequences, ultimatums, groundings, they will work temporarily. And just a little caveat, sometimes we do need to put something in place that we might call a consequence for safety reasons. But it's not the consequence that's going to change the behavior. It's the relationship that's going to change the behavior. So yeah, I might say, hey, I need to take away your phone for a little bit, but it's to serve them. It's because it feels as though that will help them in their development, or it just is a safety thing. Maybe they're getting on it. They're staying on it too long. So there might be a time where we're going to take that phone away, but not because they deserve it or they're in trouble or gosh, this is going to teach them. It's because it's going to serve them. And I do it in a way that preserves the relationship. And part of that is just how I prepare for that limit of taking the phone away or having them not have the phone for a while. That's a better way to say it. And my beliefs, why I'm doing it and what it's creating. Taking away the belief that that is what's going to whip them into shape. It's not going to whip them into shape. And if I do it wrong, it's going to make them push back harder. So when we can trust this, which has to go parallel with trusting that although they create safety and boundaries that are important, they are not what's going to teach the lesson. So it's not that I'm asking you to give up the limits. I'm asking you to give up what you think those limits are going to create in a behavior change or a lesson that they're going to learn. Does that make sense? So we have to have the firmness. In fact, they've done the longitudinal studies where they have studied authoritative parents and really passive parents and nurturing parents and all the different variations. And what they found is when a parent was too authoritative, too controlling, hard with the consequences, like you had kids that pushed back. If you had, and there were behavior problems because of that. If they're all compassion and they really give the child too much of what they want, which is very different than what they need, they're pampering them and there's no limits, you have very entitled people who also struggled because they didn't have limits and they didn't have respect for authority and they also didn't fulfill their potential, you could say. So the magic is firm and compassion, but the firmness isn't to teach the lesson. The firmness is to keep them safe, to help them have boundaries that will serve them. But that's not where the lesson gets taught. That's not where the behavior changes. The behavior comes because there's such safety and trust in the relationship. And the child is able to feel that safety in their own body and to come to terms with that on their own and to have the intrinsic motivation come online and help them want to make a better decision. Okay, so we believe that we're going to change our lives, our kids, or make our parenting better from the outside in. Typically, that's where our brain wants to go. Even if we start to come along with me on this journey, there still is going to be possibly moments where your brain's, oh my gosh, they just have to stop fighting and then everything will go better. But I want us to really, really be on to ourselves about this. What do I need to do internally to show up good no matter what? Why do I want the kids to stop fighting or the house to be cleaner or the bedtime to go smoother or whatever? Why do I want those things? And it's always because of how we believe we'll feel if we have them. So if those things are happening, I'm going to feel peace. I'm going to feel successful. I'm going to feel capable. I'm going to feel good. So we try to change our world so that we feel better instead of feeling better inside. And that changes our world. Does that make sense? I'm going to say that one more time. So we try to change our world so we feel better instead of feeling better to change the world. This is everything, you guys. This is everything. When I am able to show up, or when you guys are able to show up to something that right now is so triggery, the kids fighting, the messy house, the tantrum over no cookie, whatever it is for you. We all have a little handful of them that for some reason, these little gifts have been given to us to see the triggers I feel like are gifts, to see where inside of me do I still have some growing and learning? Because when we are able to take those things and transmute them, to transform them into opportunities for deeper connection, and we stay calm and connected and calm no matter what they're doing, this will happen if you do connect method parenting and you're taking your brain to the gym and your emotions to the gym, and we're strengthening them and we're increasing our capacity so that we can show up no matter what. And when we feel better, when we have a different emotional reaction, we change the world, but it's coming from here out. The experience our children have when we come into a situation that would normally cause so much annoyance, and we truly are able to set a limit, but from a compassionate place, but be still being firm, then their world changes for them. Think how that changes everything for them. So there's a process to this, and we don't have to control anything outside of us, but I don't want you to be surprised when things start changing. So you don't have to change anything outside of you, but when you start doing this work, you will change and things will change. So one of them is learning how to manage these emotions, whether it's fear, failure, irritation, annoyance, resentment, whatever it is for you. Frustration is probably the core of all of them. And to get into that space and be able to hold that emotion inside of ourselves, that is the first thing. Learning how to hold these emotions and not let them drive us anymore. We're going to process them. We're going to affirm ourselves. We're going to track them. We need to be able to make friends with our emotions and realize, especially at first, as we're going from point A to point B, from where we are to where we want to be, we're going to still have these emotions come up inside of us. And the ticket there isn't to think that, oh no, something's gone wrong. I feel this emotion. I'm upset again at the kids. It's, oh, part of me is really upset. The default part of me, that subconscious brain, this little neural pathway in my brain, it is going, of course, to say, this is not okay. And for me to be able to hold that and feel it to the point where I just can go from mad to sad, even though you might not say it that way, it's really resisting or thinking this is a terrible emotion. I don't want it in my body. I've got it to go, have to have it go away, to surrendering to it and realizing it's just a chemical reaction happening because of a thought in my brain. This is normal. So I like to think failure is simply a thought, or the resentment I'm having right now, it's just an emotion. This fear, it's normal. It's expected. It means to lean in harder, to understand more. What if that was where we were? So we start to learn to manage our fears, our failures, our resentments, our frustrations. We're learning how to just let it be there. And then we're understanding that the resistance, and dropping into this even more, the resistance, and I touched base on this already, but I really want to say this because this is so big. If there's anxiety around it, if there's worry about having that emotion and what's going to happen if I feel this way, making friends and just being okay with that too. This morning, I woke up, actually all day yesterday, I was having a lot of thoughts. I have just a lot of stuff that's coming up. And for a minute, my brain was, this is a problem, and I could sense it. And then I said, no, this is just what it feels like when you have a lot of stuff on your plate. It's not a problem. This doesn't need to be a problem. And I just sat in there and, how is that true? How can I learn from this? How am I growing? How is this helping me grow? So understanding that whatever is coming up for you, the more you have the ability to observe it. And really, I think that's one of the beautiful superpowers you have as humans, is to have this agency, this freedom, this ability to think about our thinking and really observe from a place of compassion for myself. So I was giving myself firm and compassion too. I was really firm on this, we're not going down that path to believe that this is a problem, and really compassionate that my brain wanted to. And then it pivoted and it was totally fine. So this is huge. I feel like when I study wildly successful people, I'm amazed at their ability to hold the negative emotions that come in as they're going through obstacles. And really, the people who have been able to master that, they have a commitment to figure that out. They're the ones that continue to grow. It's not smooth, it's bumpy, but they do it. And so when I apply that to parenting, if we can get to a place where I can handle any emotion and not have that drive me to take action like yelling or get frustrated with the kids or blame myself or retreat or be too soft if I need to lay down a limit. That's one of the magic keys. This idea, and I was talking about this earlier, of this idea of what do I make it mean if I release control? I'm being lax. I'm letting them get away. How will they ever learn? That's where our default brain wants to go. That's actually not true. And I hope learning that it's not I'm either firm or I'm lax. It's like, oh, there's the middle way. It's both. I need to be compassionate and I need to be firm when I need to be firm. And I'm going to learn to balance and do that dance. And my confidence to navigate that beautiful, firm, compassionate dance as I create that reality for myself and be able to hold all these emotions and retrain my brain on the thoughts. Yes, so good. Okay, so just to recap, learn how to manage our emotions, see them for what they are, letting it run its course. And then the next one is to allow it to be there. And then the next step is stop the blame game. Don't feel powerless to it. We want to be able to stop the feeling of I'm out of control. I feel powerless. The kids just don't listen to me ever. That story is so disempowering. But oftentimes when we're being run by our emotions, we go straight there. It's usually part of our journey. So in the moment or after the fact, whenever actually preparing in the moment, after the fact, if we can understand like, oh, there's no one to blame. Not my kids, not me, not the stories, not the thoughts. There's nothing wrong. This is just what is. It gets me out of powerlessness and not feeling in control. And then we want to start creating the confidence. So when we can start to see the story we have and the emotions that are coming up around the situations that are happening with our kids, we can see them. We can feel the emotions. We can be the watcher. We can invite them in. We can stop blaming ourselves. And we can create confidence as a result of that. Because now I'm not carried away by that story. I'm creating confidence because I'm overcoming my self-doubt and I'm using the obstacles to help me. Oh, they're fighting again. How is this going to help me be a better mom? How is this actually going to help me strengthen my relationship with my kids? And what this starts to create for us is an up level in emotional maturity for ourselves. We start feeling responsible. We start feeling powerful. We start feeling capable. We start feeling successful. And that creates the best chain reaction ever. And then we can get better or learning and improving our ability to do what we're doing, managing our thoughts, tracking our emotions, creating powerful thoughts, and creating powerful results. All those questions I was asking at the beginning, or I gave you at the beginning to ask yourself when you're in that 24-hour window period of having a conversation with your child, if you feel like you need to, that is diving into this, like really, what am I thinking? And moving away from this negative story I have to a neutral and then to a very empowering story. And we begin to solve all of our problems. We learn to be solution focused, and we know that all of our problems are something that we can solve inside of us, and that we change the world by changing ourselves. Isn't that the Gandhi quote? Be the change you wish to see in the world, or something like that. So a couple of questions I want us all to dive in on. I want you to all think of something that you are wanting to change your thought around, your belief around. You're like, if I could walk into the kids fighting and have a different belief about it, that would be amazing. Or around the messy house. I want you to think about one of those situations. And I want you to ask yourselves, how are you currently managing the emotions that are coming up around that? First of all, do you know what emotions are coming up around that? Do you know what you're thinking around it? And if you do, what are you currently doing to understand the emotions, dropping the anxiety, not blaming yourself, creating more confidence, up-leveling? Because really, all of those situations that are happening with our kids, if we thought of them as, ooh, another opportunity to up-level my emotional intelligence and my connection with my kids, what would we be thinking then? So what are your thoughts around it? Your default, and then what you want to think about it. How are you dealing, or what do you want to do if you haven't thought about this before? How do you want to deal with the resistance that might come up to disbelieving the story you've had about it? So if, for example, if my thought when one of my kids yells at another child is they're rude, they're unkind, they're not going to be successful in life because they're not going to learn how to manage their emotions, all of those things, like that's my typical story. So how do I want to deal with the resistance that might come up when I don't want to believe that anymore? What do you want to do? And what can you do to allow whatever negative story comes up without believing, like jumping into the seat and being, yeah, let's take this for a ride. We want to say, stop, I don't believe that anymore. One of my favorite things to say is, I see you, or I feel you if it's an emotion. Thank you. may or may not be true. And if you want to get really bold, stop. I don't believe that anymore. So what are you going to do when you're starting to do that interruption process? And then I want to ask us all to ask this question just from a place of beautiful curiosity, is like, when am I falling into victim mentality? The victim mentality is just anytime I feel like I have no power in a situation. What if that was never the case? What if we always had power in the situation? We just had to discover where it was. Where's the niche where we can have power in this situation? The kids are fighting every day. I feel like I have no control. How do I actually have control? Where do I have control? We always have control of how we're showing up. And what if we believe the way I show up, that could change everything? If I showed up differently, that changes their behavior, the deep sense of how you are believing about it. And then describe how you can use obstacles to create success. So how can you use, and this is so good, you guys, whatever it is for you, whatever situation you came up with, how could you use that to create massive success? I'm going to offer you this. When our child is struggling the most, if we show up in a way that honors and respects them, we might still have to set a limit. We might still have to take something away or move them into a different room or whatever. But if our belief why we're doing that, how we're doing that is coming from such a beautiful place, and I would encourage everyone to really get clear on what do you want to believe about these situations. I want to just offer this to everybody, that anytime there is an off-track behavior with our child, the ability to create deep connection is tenfold. Because when we're at our worst, if someone sees us and believes in us and is patient with us, and even though there might be this hard, crusty layer at first, ultimately, if we keep at it, when someone believes in us and is there for us when we're at our worst, our connection and a level of feeling safe and trusted by them, it's double, triple, quadruple, I don't know, 10 times even what it is when everything's going great. So if we're going to go on a bike ride with my daughter and bond with her, that's awesome. For sure, do that. That's going to have a result. We're going to have a good relationship. But I will also offer that if we can show up with that same anticipatory, beautiful, kind, loving, nurturing, excited energy when things are going off track, the yield, the result is 10 times. We just get more out of that experience. Our connection grows more if we can do it then. Okay, so that, to me, that's how we can use the obstacle, what we consider the obstacle, as a way to create success. Okay, so I'm going to look at a couple questions that just came in. I think it's so hard to believe that if I don't scold them, then and there, it's okay, especially if others are around. I believe that the expectation is for me to punish my kids for bad behavior. If I do anything but be firm and stern, then I'm letting it slide. So this is where we want to start to really get clear on what the firmness looks like. I was saying with the longitudinal study, and this is where our brains, and I get to, because my brain was, I don't get this. I can either be firm or I can be like compassionate, but I can't be both. And what I want us to start to play around with is actually the magic is to be both, to be firm and to stay connected, to stay attached. So we don't need to scold them, but we might need to set a very firm limit. But from a place of, I believe that this is what they need. I believe in their goodness. So we're not giving that firm limit. I like to use limit because it's a different word than we usually use in our culture. So it kind of gets us out of our normal way of thinking about consequences. So if I'm like, okay, how do I set a firm limit that's very clear that even to the outside world might look like, oh, she's like giving them a consequence. But the emotion that I have when I'm doing it is really deep compassion for them. They really need me to give them this limit for their benefit. So we're not letting them slide, but we are not going to come with the tone that a lot of us have been accustomed to, which guilty as charged, have done it. And let me give you an example of this. And then I really want to dig into this because I think this is the crux. This is the crux, letting go of this belief that the consequences or the scolding or the punishment or the thing we take away or the privilege that they don't get is the thing that's going to teach the lesson. And as we can unpack that more and be like, no, they need limits because they're immature, they're young, they don't understand cause and effect sometimes, or they're just not thinking straight, they're struggling. They need me to step in there and create these boundaries for them 100%. But to get clear on why am I doing that? What is it creating? That is everything. I have 6 kids. There's a time where one was just really, really, really struggling. And it was coming out in the form of her saying unkind things to her siblings that, from my point of view, they haven't done anything. And not that it even mattered if they had done something, it still wouldn't have been the best way, I don't think, to have communicated if there was a grievance. But in this case, it was just that she was really, really frustrated and annoyed. And so in that case, don't copy and paste this, but I'm using this as an example. Seen and heard sets a framework for how to set this firm limit from a place of compassion and love. So the first thing is to see them. So this involves getting closer to them, looking them in the eyes, seeing if they're responding. Do we have a working relationship? I would recommend we always do this before we give a direction or set a limit. In seen and heard, it's a sandwich. There's see at the top and bridge at the bottom. And then there's things in the middle. There is play, there is direct, there is set, which is set a limit, and stay. It's like this multifaceted dance that we get to play. Which steps are we going to do for this dance? And how do they need it? So for this example, I went in and we always start with see. So we're always wanting to have a working relationship first. We want to see if they're going to look at us in the eyes, if they're going to respond to what we're saying. Anytime we try to set a limit from across the room in a shouty voice, or we're not close to them where we actually can see what the heck is going on for them, we're setting ourselves and our child up for not the best outcome. So we always want to see them. This gives us some really good feedback. Are they in a place where we have two-way communication? Now, if you think about this with an adult, we would never push through a conversation with an adult if they were avoiding eye contact, they weren't responding to anything we said, they were turning their back on us. We would be, something is up. This is weird. Because with adults, we have this intuitive knowing of we have to establish a working relationship before we can move forward. But with kids, sometimes we forget. So this is step one, is we always have to have this working relationship with our children. Look at them in the eyes, make sure we're on the same page. If not, we want to just stop right there. This has happened with my daughter where I go in and she will not look at me in the eyes. She doesn't want me to touch her, which is, I get that. Sometimes we don't want to be touched. Typically, she does like me too. So to me, with this particular child, it's an indicator she's off. And I have no working relationship with her. So this is not the time to really do anything but try to establish a relationship with her. I do, if she's yelling at a sibling, I will say, hey, we can't yell at that. And I'll try my very best to separate or to make it so that everyone is safe. So that might look like her coming into a bedroom with me just saying to the other kids, I'm so sorry. And I will circle back. I'll say, we'll talk about this later, just so they know I'm here and present, I'm not being passive. And I'll ask if they might be willing to leave because they might be in a better place. So I'm reading the room, but I can't establish a working relationship if she's not responding to my voice, her body language is off and she's pulling away. It just tells me where she is emotionally. And that's just feedback. Then we go on to the next one. If I could establish a working relationship, sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. Then I might give a direction like, hey, actually, in this case, it'd be a limit. Hey, we can't yell at your brothers like that, or you can't talk to them like that. It's just not something we do. Now, if I can't even establish a working relationship with her, it's not that you can't say that. It's just if I say that, I'm not going to expect her to actually respond to me. We're trying to create safety for other people, including our child. So we are going to be using the components of the seen and heard framework to navigate the situation. We're not letting it slide. We're not letting them get away with it. What we're doing is we're maintaining connection, setting limits as needed, and being compassionate and firm. The behavior shift is going to come from them feeling safe in their body, their nervous system calming down, from us feeling safe and connected to them. Our relationship with them is going to help them navigate that, and their relationship with themselves is going to help them tap into that. So I was talking to a parent one time, and she was saying, it just feels like I'm just letting them off the hook. I'm not putting forth effort. This feels like the easy way. This is not the easy way. It can become very smooth and easy as you get used to it. But initially, it's not just letting them run wild. We're being very intentional in changing the way we interact with them by controlling our reaction to the situation and then being really intentional in how we're navigating it. So I do want to share something that was really fabulous. I love being able to really honor the strengths of all of my kids. And I feel like having big emotions is actually a beautiful thing, but it also can be a very challenging thing for a young person to figure out how to maneuver. So anyway, I was away. I wasn't home for a weekend. And I got a call from my daughter, my 20-year-old, who was at home running the show while I was gone. And she's, oh my gosh, this sibling is really struggling and she's annoyed with everybody. I texted my daughter. I was struggling. How can I help you? What's going on? Do you want to call? And she responded with, I don't want to talk to you. I'm really annoyed with everyone. But then she said this. She said, and I know it's me right now. So I'm trying to figure this out. And I was like, this is so interesting. This is so good. This is progress. This is what I really want. I don't want her to think I have to always be the one trying to curb her big emotions. She's learning how to do this, and it's messy and it's frustrating for her. It's frustrating for those around her sometimes, but the progress that she's making, the belief she has in herself is just really, really empowering. So this is what we create inside of our kids, is their ability to not blame or shame themselves for their mistakes, for their mess ups, to take ownership of it and then to problem solve it. Her brain is coming online and she's more capable of this. When they're younger, we have to do a lot of the heavy lifting for them. But as long as we are continuing to use these core principles of really honoring and staying connected and firm as needed, they will be able to come to that on their own. And what was really fascinating too, is we were able to text back and forth and come up with some ideas, because in the moment, and this is another thing we start to realize, the conversation to have about in depth, what was happening, and what were you thinking, and why are you annoyed? Not the time right in the middle of it. And so in the middle of it was just, how can we support her through this period of time? That's what I was thinking. How can I support her through this period of time? I wasn't home to help her get into a place where her nervous system could start to feel safe and calm down again. And that was my intention. And that was the question I was asking myself. And I had limited ability to help her. So it was, what are the things that will help for, in this situation, help alleviate some of this pressure she's feeling when she's around all the siblings? And we started brainstorming, how can she just step away, take a break, go outside, listen to some music, maybe watch a movie that would change her mood, to just create a little bit of release to the stress and frustration. And I think all of us can relate. Sometimes we're just a little annoyed and irritated and agitated, and we just have that like inside of us for a little bit. And we have to learn how to get to this place where we can have that be along for the ride for the day if needed. I mean, obviously we'd love to have it leave, but sometimes it stays, that annoyance stays, and not let the annoyance drive us. Curiosity can drive us. In this case, I was trying to shift her out of annoyance because she was the one that texted me. I'm annoyed with everyone. And it was like, how do we get curious? How do we create safety? So asking her those questions, what do you need to be feeling more safe? What do you need to feel supported right now? How can we help you stay safe and the other kids stay safe? And so we're problem solving it that way. And even though you might have younger kids, or maybe you have an older kid, it doesn't matter. The question is really, how can I connect and make sure, read the room, read them. Once I have had a working relationship with them, then I give a direction, set a limit. Sometimes I need to stay with them if they have a really strong emotion coming up, or maybe we just need to go play and have some fun and get them out of that in that way. And then bridging is the last step. And that's always us helping them reconnect to us. So say I did have to set a limit and say, I need you to go to your room. I would then bridge by saying, but I can't wait till we ride bikes this afternoon, or till we play that game, or I'd love to do something with you in 20 minutes. Let's do something together. And I'm helping them know our relationship is still good. We're still safe. And that is so, so, so important, because anytime we mess up, if there's an authoritative figure, there's this feeling of, oh, they probably are disappointed or don't me. So we want to just help them know, no, we're good. We're so good. And you are so awesome. This is just something we're working on right now. Okay. So in recap, everyone, practice this week, seeing how you can be firm and compassionate, how you can release the control, how you can use those questions I gave you at the beginning to get yourself in a really beautiful place where you can have a conversation if needed. Okay. All right. So good. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, come check out League, my Connect Method parenting coaching program, where we take this material and we apply it using my proven formula. Head over to cmp.works/join.